Amazon dropped prices for Amazon Prime members at Whole Foods. So they've really got to keep up with all of that competition because now other grocery stores are really trying to go after Amazon, go after Whole Foods. So they are doing everything that they can.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. Download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
What's happening in our cities, what's happening in our government, what's happening in our churches, this mess that's going on in the United States of America, the reason for it, the blame can go squarely on God's people. God's not expecting the heathens of the world to do his work here on earth. That job goes to you and to me.
Time to get back to God. Weekday afternoons at 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Yeah, well, what I learned during the campaign is that there's a big difference between what people in America care about and what people in Washington or in the media care about.
We need to have the Attorney General redact it to make sure there's no national security classified material, no grand jury minutes, and I would submit nothing that is critical of people who have not been indicted and haven't had an opportunity to respond.
Mr. Barr gets to handle this. That's how the law works. And Mr. Barr has made it clear that he's going to release it to Congress before he shows it to us. That's his decision. So we're going to let the system work.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. You are live and direct on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk, and we're so glad to have you here. Look, we got a jam-packed show for you today. We have Keisha Russell. She's a First Liberty Institute Associate Counsel. She's going to join us to talk about this new fad that the liberals are engaging in of banning Chick-fil-A from airports. Like, that's going to stop people from eating Chick-fil-A. Honestly, liberals must not understand that if you're in the airport and you're jonesing for some heavenly chicken and you can't get it there, that you'll just get it at your destination. You'll get it when you get back from your trip, and you'll go as often as you want because they can't stop you from visiting Chick-fil-A. And they're not even hiding it. Like, that's what's so funny about that. So we'll be talking about that with Keisha. We're also going to talk about closing the southern border. The president has threatened this before. I've been yelling for him to do it. Just do it. Just pull the trigger. Come on, shut it down. We don't know if he's going to actually do that, but he is sounding very serious about moving the resources that are currently manning the ports of entry, moving those resources into the areas that don't have a wall. Interesting, right? So we'll see. Also, did you know that we were going to sell F-35s, stealth fighters? We were going to sell them to Turkey. To Erdogan. Yeah, we were going to sell our, So anyway, they have to first deliver before they give you the jets. They give you all these training modules, and we'd already begun delivering those. And now President Trump has pumped the brakes on that, and we're going to discuss why. Why would the president at first be okay with selling our stealth fighters to them, and then why the sudden reversal? So we'll discuss that in segment 3. Right now, I have 2 great stories for you that I want to dive into today. And the first one is about this young woman. She's 15 years old, and she has been, going to regular school, and she liked eating a certain spicy sauce on her food that was sold at a restaurant that went out of business. And so when the business went down, she said to herself, and she started, she's 8 years old. Let's get some perspective here. This little girl is 8 years old. And she says, well, Mom, I want to make this sauce. So she's growing up in New York. And then she's eating the wings, and the wing place shuts down, and that means she can't get the sauce anymore. So she and her mom get together, and here's the quote from her is, I love the hot sauce they offered, so I went home and tried to recreate the flavor. So her mom's name is Monique Creighton, and her name's Tyla Simone. And they sell 3 sauces with unique tastes that come in lemon pepper, spicy, and tangy flavors. This all came from her wanting to recreate this spicy hot sauce. So now she's homeschooled by her mom. Her mom has quit her day job, and she works full-time for their company. They're in 22 distributor areas, so supermarkets are now picking it up, but they have 22 distributors of the sauce. And her mom says, you know, they're now reportedly raking in $8,000 a month due to the sauce. And she says it's exciting and scary at times, and it's stressful to balance my business and going to school. But I love doing it, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. People should know that it's never too early to start. And this is a great story, but you know what just adds a little bit more zing to this story? Because we've been covering on the show this week, and we'll continue to cover this push by the Democrats to make every person think they're a victim, but their special victims are those of us who sport the permanent tan. If you're black, the Democrats have a special kind of victimhood that they reserve only for you. Not even one of their key interest groups, the LGBTQ XYZ group, they're not even as big of victims as the black folks. Us blacks, we're just huge victims. We can't do anything on our own. And if there's not a Democrat in charge helping us to get stuff done, then, you know, we're doomed, like they say on the cartoons. So this little girl and her mom just happened to be permanently tanned. And I guess no one told them that they wouldn't be able to start a business, an 8-year-old, and sell hot sauce and many different flavors to all kinds of unsuspecting Americans who they haven't checked to see that the Creightons are black, and so they can't buy the sauce. No imaginary white man has risen up and said, there's no way you're selling any sauce in America because you're black and you got to be a victim. Get yourself on Section 8. Oh, no. They just decided that they wanted to recreate a sauce that was no longer available to them. They recreated it and sold it first. You know, obviously this was like a personal thing. They're just selling individual little bottles themselves. But now they actually distribute it, meaning the hot sauce has a label on it, the 3 different labels. It comes in a bottle that's standard to her business. They're manufacturing this. They're owning a business. This is now a small business success story. And I believe the glory goes to God, obviously. But it also is incumbent upon us, every one of us. You see a need, you fill it. She saw a personal need, which was she wanted to eat the hot sauce, and she made it for herself. Others in her sphere of influence said, that's some good sauce. You should really think about letting other people get their hands on that. And that's how a small business is born. The story doesn't cover. It's a very short piece over at NBC4i.com. It's not one of those ones that's like an in-depth expose. They don't have any video that goes with it. But you can imagine that there were many times that maybe she wanted to watch a little bit of SpongeBob or maybe go somewhere on the weekend. And instead, they stayed home and they went over numbers or maybe, you know, looked at different bottle sizes, compared pricing for different manufacturers or you know, people who actually mix the sauce together, companies that would get that done for them. And they probably, before they branched out and had 3 sauces, they had the one, they had to perfect it. They had to get feedback from people. They had to make changes. And they had to decide on what size bottle should this be and how much should it cost. There's like a million little decisions that go into being a small business owner. And these 2 women, a mother-daughter team, and this started when she was 8 years old, they decided they were going to undertake it and they made it happen. So obviously, most Americans don't believe that we're a country that's just chock to the brimming with victims and black people are the main ones. But it's mission creep here, people. We've got mission creep on Americans on the whole believing that black people just aren't getting enough money from the government to help them with their plight. That used to be a very small percentage, like 30%. Now we're up, I think, at near 50% of Americans who believe that the government just isn't spending enough on the black community to make any improvements. Now, obviously, that's just not true. We're spending more money than ever on the war on poverty. We're doing more than we've ever done before. And we do a really good job in America because our poverty-stricken individuals have more than, you know, working class people in other countries. And so perspective helps us to understand where we are. But there are so many more Creightons, Tyler Simones, just running around doing business, little kids who are entrepreneurs, who have started businesses that literally it's something they started at home that they like to do, and now it's a business. Look at all the kids who now program for the gaming industry or work for YouTube and Google. They're kids, they got good at something, they started doing things on YouTube, and now they're paid a lot of money to do what they do, and they're still going to some of them are in middle school, some of them are in high school. Now, in some ways they're anomalies, but they're only anomalies if you think you can't do it. So any one of us can have this kind of outsized success. She doesn't say anything about, their faith or anything in this piece. It's really short. And I'll stick it up on Facebook if you want to read it for yourself. But I think it's worth noting, Tyla Simone Creighton, 15 years old, so she's been in business for 7 years, almost half of her little life. She's CEO of Sienna Wings. She has a top secret hot sauce recipe, which she created from scratch at the age of 8. They now have 3 flavors. And she's an American, and she just happens to sport the permanent tan. It doesn't get much better than that, you guys. It really doesn't. So if you think you can't, you're not thinking straight. You can, you will when you decide you must. So go get it. If the 8-year-old can go get it, any one of us can go get it. Nothing can hold you back if you determine in your heart you're going to make something happen. So now I want to pivot over to, let's get some political analysis from Dershowitz. He's in this clip talking about the demand for the public release of the full Mueller report. Now, yesterday we had Professor Grossman on, and he made some pretty good points about, go ahead, release the whole report. He was convincing. I thought it was interesting what he had to say. Well, you also have here Dershowitz, who's saying there's no legal basis for Democrats to demand that. It's number 2.
I think even if Barr were hypothetically to refuse to issue anything, there would be no legal basis for a court to compel him to do that. Let me give you a shoe on the other foot hypothetical. Let's go back to Comey announcing that he was not going to indict Hillary Clinton because there was insufficient proof of crime. And let's assume that the Republicans had information that there's a report within the Justice Department that says she's extremely careless in the way she handled it. And there was an effort by Republicans to subpoena that report. First of all, every Democrat would be up in arms, saying you don't subpoena reports about people who have not been indicted. That's not the way the Justice Department works. Second, the court would say, no, this is within the executive prerogative. How is this different? Sure, this is a special counsel. The special counsel, under the rules, has an obligation to file a report with the Attorney General. There's nothing in the rules that require the Attorney General to make the report public, particularly if it contains information critical of people who are not indicted. So this is a political issue.
Yeah, it's a political issue. And the double standard persists. And so nobody's shocked by the double standard, right? You're not surprised by that. It just is what it is. So let's talk about some successes. We have a little bit of time left and in this first segment. And I want to get to this because this is important to me. It's important to Americans. It's important for us to have a balanced perspective of exactly what's happening in this country, whether we like the president or not. And so when President Obama was in office, and I didn't want him there, but he was the president anyway. He was still the president of the United States. I was a citizen then, as I am now. He was my president because he was president of the country that I hold citizenship in. And I wanted desperately for him to do a good job and to be a good president, but his agenda ran counter to what doing a good job would actually entail. Now, he didn't commit any open crimes. How do you measure success? I don't know. I don't know what it looks like for you. I thought he was a really ungodly person, so it wasn't successful in my opinion. But there were occasionally, like out of the 8 years, I'd find something that I was like, oh, that good for you. That was good. Well, President Trump made a lot of promises on the campaign trail. And what we're not seeing from MSNBC and CNN is that he's been answering those promises. So I've compiled a list here for you. It's over at stacyontheright.com. I want you to hear just a few of these things because this is what you're not hearing on the 6 o'clock news from your local rip and read AP folks, and you're not hearing it on CNN or MSNBC. You hear some of it on Fox, but this is a comprehensive list. I won't get to all of it, but let's see what we can do. Nearly 4 million jobs have been created since November of 16. More than 400,000 of those were in the manufacturing sector, which, remember, pessimism never wins in business. Obama said those jobs were never coming back. They're back and they're still booming. Economic growth last quarter, 4.2%. New unemployment claims at a 49-year low. Median household income, the highest ever recorded, the highest level. Black unemployment, lowest rate ever recorded. Hispanic unemployment, lowest rate ever recorded. Asian American unemployment recently achieved the lowest rate ever recorded. Women's unemployment recently reached the lowest rate in 65 years. Youth unemployment lowest rate in nearly half a century, lowest unemployment rate ever recorded for Americans without a high school diploma. So this economic prosperity goes deep. It's not just at the surface. It's not trickle down. It's not crumbs like Nancy Pelosi said. 3.9 million Americans have been lifted off of food stamps since the election. The pledge to America's workers has resulted in employers committing to train more than 4 million Americans. The Trump administration is actually committed to vocational training, which is a way that people can come out of their old careers that are obsolete and have new careers that last for the rest of their lives. That's what they're doing. The business focus, it works. 95% of U.S. manufacturers are optimistic about the future, which is the highest level ever. Retail sales are surging, up another 6% over last year. And do you hear how I'm still talking? The music is going on? And I'm not done. GOP tax bill made small businesses lowest top marginal tax rate in more than 80 years. And I could go on, and I will. But after these messages, stay right there.
On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, we took the spices that we'd prepared and we went into the tomb. We found the stone rolled away from the tomb. When we went in, we didn't find the body of our Lord Jesus. Who took him? Where is he? Who took him?
Why do you look for the living among the dead?
Where's Jesus?
He's not here. He has risen.
Jesus was alive. He's alive.
Jesus was betrayed, abandoned, mocked, beaten, and then crucified on a cross for sinners like you and me. The Son of God was buried, and after 3 days, he rose from that grave. Urban Family Talk encourages you to rejoice in the glorious reality that our God is a living God.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. I had the opportunity to teach each of our children how to drive. And early on, I taught them that the most important thing is to be alert. See the entire road, but also be aware of people, cars, and animals during the unexpected. You see, a safe driver has to have both sight and focus, to see it all, but to be aware of the specific. Aren't you glad that the God we serve has both sight and focus? God sees everything. He spans the entire globe, and yet he also zeroes in on us specifically. He knows us intimately. That's why I love Psalm 33, verses 13 and 18. Listen to these words. The Lord looks from heaven. He sees all the sons of men. But look at verse 18. Behold, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him, on those who hope for his loving kindness. Do you see both the general and specific here? He says the Lord looks from heaven. He looks out and he sees all the sons of men. He has a panoramic view. But notice in verse 18, behold, the eye of the Lord, an indication of his attention. Behold, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him. There's a special attention that God gives. God focuses on those who fear him, who worship him. Oh, he sees you and me, but it's as if he says, I want those who reverence me to come closer. I want to give them special attention because they love me. They want to be with me. They revere me. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. God sees us. He knows us, but his favor is poured out on us when we honor, worship, and reverence him.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey there, welcome to the program. Let's go to the phones really quickly, and I will periodically dip into the wonderful list of accomplishments by the president. And as I was going through, I noted that I added a couple of pro-life ones that are recent, and they're down towards the bottom. But there are some other things. As I'm compiling it, I'm thinking there's more than this, and the list is really long. You can find it at stacyontheright.com. Let's go to the phones really quickly. We've got Mary in Pennsylvania. Hey, Mary, thanks for calling the show.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. You make my ride home from work worthwhile.
Oh, thanks. Awesome.
So I'm a librarian, but I also have taught makerspace at school. That's a kind of a new movement. And there are thousands and thousands of coding jobs that are going unfilled and are going to go unfilled because kids are not taught to code. So we have started to teach them to code in school. And a friend of mine, her son studied philosophy and political science in college and couldn't find a job, but he did teach himself a computer language, and he works for Xbox in Seattle now. And he actually can work from anywhere, so he's currently traveling the world and working for Xbox while he travels.
Awesome. Wow. So, again, all of these opportunities for success, and right? I mean, is that what you're sharing? This is great news. That's wonderful.
So if I were, I don't have any grandchildren, but if I did, I would buy them robotic devices like Sparrows and Ozobots and learn how to code with them. And the more they become comfortable with it, then they'll be able to build upon that.
Wonderful.
So public libraries have their stuff, school libraries, so.
Awesome. Well, thank you for calling and sharing that. And that is good advice. Parents should be steering their kids towards STEM, but not all kids are going to be naturally bent towards that, or they might want to do something else, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for kids who are open to those opportunities, we should be sharing those things with them and encouraging them in those areas. Thank you for calling the show today. So now it's my pleasure to welcome our next guest. We have Keisha Russell of First Liberty Institute. She's Associate Counsel there. Keisha, thank you for taking time out to join us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
So, I'm fascinated by the work that you're doing at First Liberty Institute. You have some analysis that I need the listeners to hear it because it's so well articulated by you, which is that it's really not legal or constitutional for airports to pick one business that can't do business in the airport based upon the religious leanings of the owners of the business.
That's right. It's a constitutional violation, as a matter of fact, for the government to make that decision based on the religion of Chick-fil-A, for example, is what we've been talking about. But the fact that Chick-fil-A has a Christian stance and the fact that they give to other Christian organizations is the reason that San Antonio decided to deny them a spot in the San Antonio airport, despite the fact that Chick-fil-A serves everyone. And I think it just proves that the only ones discriminating are the San Antonio government officials.
So, what's funny about this whole story is that they're shooting themselves in the foot because Chick-fil-A is so insanely popular. Like, wherever they open a store, the funniest thing to see is people in the drive-thru on Sundays. Like, I've even done it. I've driven up to Chick-fil-A on a Sunday and pulled into the thing. And then I'm like, oh, no, they're closed on Sunday. And then I'm all disappointed because I can't have any, what I call, my nickname for it is Heavenly Chicken. I can't have any Heavenly Chicken today, so I have to wait until Monday to get some. They really have a wonderful business model. Their customer service is just top-notch. And they serve anyone, and anyone can work there. So what is this obsession with trying to make their successful chicken business about their social stances?
I think, despite the fact that Chick-fil-A is so successful, I think there's just a broader concern that the government is so comfortable making these hostile remarks about Christian businesses or religion in general. And that's, I think, the biggest problem here is that the government officials were so brazen about their opinion about Chick-fil-A that they didn't mind that they were, violating the law. They're also violating, the fact that they have received federal grants. And by discriminating against Chick-fil-A for its religion, it's breaking its promise that it makes to receive those federal grants.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the way this is cracking out, though. I think we're now up to 3 airports that have banned them. It's almost like people are sitting around and they're bored because they can't talk about collusion in the Mueller report. So they're like, what can we do to tick people off? Let's ban Chick-fil-A's from airports. Will this stand up? If Chick-fil-A decides to fight back, will it stand up in court, or how do you get something like this reversed? How do they fight back on it?
Well, it just depends on what the San Antonio City Council, what the rules are for those kinds of votes. But absolutely, if Chick-fil-A takes this to court, San Antonio is in a lot of trouble because the statements from the officials are pretty hard evidence that they were hostile to religion. And the court stated, most recently in Masterpiece that when the government is hostile to religion that way, that is a violation of the First Amendment.
Yeah. So would they be able to get some kind of compensatory damages, or would it just be the kind of decision that reverses the edict that they can't have a store in the airport?
I think it just depends on what the guidelines for San Antonio City Council says. But if hopefully the council can reverse the decision before it gets that far. If there's a lawsuit and it goes to trial, that'll take a while on its own. And perhaps Chick-fil-A then could say, look, if we were in the airport this whole time, we would have earned such and such amount of money. And they could definitely, try and get that back from San Antonio.
So it's San Antonio, and then I'm looking down my list. Chick-fil-A banned from
Buffalo?
Buffalo, New York. Buffalo's Niagara International Airport, and it was already in the works. So what I was a little confused on is maybe Chick-fil-A was thinking about it, but they hadn't actually worked on it. But this story says these locations were actually planned and underway, like they were about to open them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then after all of that effort and time wasted, then you have this, some summary ban coming from the city council area.
Yeah, that's right. So in the San Antonio situation, Chick-fil-A was part of the contract that was presented to them. It was the officials who said, "Oh, we'll accept the contract if you exclude Chick-fil-A and only Chick-fil-A."
Okay, so let's kind of go here, Keisha. Because I'm just trying to figure out, can this same tactic be used? In other words, can you go to your city council officials and get, basically tell them we're going to run somebody to unseat you next time. We want some help getting CNN out of the airport. Because if they can ban Chick-fil-A, why can we not ban CNN off the TVs in the airport?
Right, and I think that's the point. Really, is that they're subjecting Chick-fil-A to unequal treatment, and the government is not allowed to do that. And most importantly, they're making all their decisions about Chick-fil-A because they don't like Chick-fil-A's Christian beliefs, and it's just so alarming. And I think no matter what religion anyone is, they should be really outraged about how Chick-fil-A is being treated here.
Well, can we not just surmise that in the future it could be a radically different landscape here in this country, and any organization that actually believes in same-sex marriage, Christians could say, well, you can't open your business in this town, you can't have your business in this mall, you can't have your business in the airport. This sets a precedent that if it's left to stand, if the pendulum swings in the other direction, then they would be the victims of their own bad behavior.
Well, and that's kind of the irony of the whole situation, right? Because the city council screams about not wanting to have businesses that, violate their non-discrimination ordinances and those kinds of things, but they're the only one violating those ordinances right now. Chick-fil-A does not in any way. There's no evidence that Chick-fil-A violates any of their non-discrimination ordinances, but the officials seem to be perfectly fine with violating those ordinances if they're talking about Christians.
I think I think that's the best summation of how ironic and double standard like this is. Like, it's a total double standard. Can you imagine what the leftists would do, what they'd say on CNN if there was a Christian business that said, we're not going to do this with you, or you can't have your business here just because your owners support the LGBT movement. You can't have your business here with us, like at the mall or something. They would literally, the ACLU would be there with, tuxedos on in like 10 minutes. They would not stop until they got that overturned.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. That would definitely be a much different, outcome and response. And it's just a shame that everyone wouldn't come to the table and talk about how sad and outrageous this is, because it is a blatant violation of the law. And like I said, no matter who you work with or stand for, what your religion is, you should be able to see this for exactly what it is, and that's outright discrimination.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think what's wonderful is that your team over at First Liberty Institute, as usual, you guys are really quick on the uptake. You're right there to support Chick-fil-A. Is there any other action that you know of that they're planning on taking, or is it's still kind of early for the story? Because I know it's just breaking.
Right. So, we wrote a letter to the Department of Transportation and asked them to review and investigate, San Antonio's actions. And you can see the letter at firstliberty.org. I won't lay out all of the legal arguments there, but, we're hoping that at the very least there's some kind of investigation about what's going on here, if it's even at the federal level, state level. Attorney General Ken Paxton has called for an investigation as well. And so we're hoping that will kind of shed the appropriate light on the situation, and the city council will be forced, to rethink its decision, and Buffalo will kind of follow suit out of fear of, being found in violation of the law by a court.
Is that enough of a motivation? Sometimes I get the feeling that people don't really care if a court finds them in violation unless there's some serious penalty attached to it.
Well, I'm sure there's a way to find a serious penalty here, right? But I think sometimes, the court of popular opinion will sometimes win. If there's enough backlash, it's possible that they could step back anyway.
Well, I'm so glad you guys are on the case. And I wanted to say congratulations on that Fox News hit. I caught that. I was like, this is amazing. And it's really great to have you on the program. I hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right. Good to talk to you. It's Keisha Russell. She is an associate counsel at First Liberty Institute. And I really appreciate the work they're doing in supporting businesses just to have the same freedoms as everyone else. Not more and certainly not less. That's fantastic. I want to get back to my list because my list is awesome. And you guys, you have to share this list. And you can also find a lot of other cool stuff that I've posted over at stacyontheright.com. But here's a few more tidbits. And we have just a couple minutes left in this segment, which is perfect. Remember the old Obamacare individual mandate? That's gone. Regulatory relief for community banks and credit unions. The president has actually enacted that. Record number of regulations eliminated, a whopping 26 for every new one. That was the record for 2017 and 2018. Not sure what numbers they're striking out for this year, but they're definitely on a tear, getting rid of regulations. The president's administration helped win the U.S., Mexico, Canada United bid for the 2026 World Cup for you sports fans. Helped win the U.S. bid for the 2028 Summer Olympics to be held in Los Angeles. And we could go on some more, so we will. The president is actually providing more affordable health care options, the administration is, through association health plans and short-term duration plans, meaning people get to try something out before they have to commit to a year or more. That's great for people who are in transition. You know you're going to be off doing something like a special project where you have no insurance, but you know the next year you're planning on finding permanent employment. That's what this is about. The association plans just mean that employed individuals can get together and create a plan with the insurer. It's them negotiating with the insurer as a group. That's the way amazing things happen. Plans that fit the need of the group. You see, it's like that custom latte or that Uber or that Airbnb. It's along those lines. President Trump signed the right to try legislation. The administration secured $6 billion in new funding to fight the opioid epidemic. The Medicare program has been reformed to stop hospitals from overcharging low-income seniors on their drugs. This saved seniors hundreds of millions of dollars in 2018 alone. And that's a serious problem. If you've ever talked to any elderly people about their drugs that they have to take on a regular basis and how expensive they are, these are people who are on retirement, fixed incomes. They cannot afford these huge astronomical sums for their much needed daily medication. So these are things that the president's doing that are actually helping real Americans at the level that you need the help. You need someone to say to the insurance company, let's find out a different way to get these drugs to these people that will mean that they can afford it while the insurance company is still netting, still in profitability. The Trump administration has actually reduced high-dose opioid prescriptions by 16% in 2017, which is a great start, and we're hoping to see more. The president signed the VA Choice Act and VA Accountability Act, expanding VA telehealth services, walk-in clinics, same-day urgent primary and mental health care services. The president has increased American coal exports by 60%. U.S. oil production has recently reached an all-time high. The United States is now a net natural gas exporter since the first time in 1957. Withdrew the United States from the job-killing Paris Climate Accord. That was such good news. I'm still geeking out about that. The president canceled the illegal anti-cold so-called Clean Power Plan. That's done. Over. Boom. Secured a record $700 billion in military funding, $716 billion for the next fiscal year. And America's NATO allies are now spending $69 billion more dollars on defense since 2016. In other words, he said, y'all are going to pay more. You're going to ante up. You're going to help support the organization that's protecting you. And after some kicking and screaming and foot stomping, they're doing it. Isn't that something? Any president before could have made that happen, regardless of political affiliation. They just didn't try, and he did, and so promises made, promises kept. I have more. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. He recently acknowledged that the Golan Heights is a part of Israel and that they control it. He's protecting Americans from terrorists with the travel ban from 6 nations, which was upheld by the Supreme Court. You want more? You got to go to StacyOnTheRight.com. We'll take your calls when we get back. 866-963-2037.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
In 2008, Tony was feeling that the season would be his final year of coaching.
In fact, my last game as coach of the Indianapolis Colts was a playoff loss to the San Diego Chargers. I remember walking to the press conference to announce my retirement, and my assistant handed me a letter.
The letter was from a family who told Tony about the child that they were going to adopt. The family said their decision to adopt was inspired because they saw Tony talking about adoption on a TV commercial. God was telling Tony that after football, he was going to use him in some special ways.
When God closes one door, be prepared for another to open.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
This is Just a Minute with Stacy Washington. It's no secret that many of America's public schools are a disaster. In public school, teaching grammar school kids about transgender sexual habits, making them practice witchcraft using Ouija boards, indoctrinating socialism, and many other things have parents at a loss for what to do. Enter the Copy Committee. The unsung heroes of grade schools across the country are the moms who spend a couple of hours per week copying worksheets and handouts for the teachers. This job isn't glamorous or particularly time-consuming, and it's not exciting, but it is a great way to make a friend out of your child's teacher and get your eyes on every sheet of paper your child sees. We cannot assume our public school isn't engaging in these practices. Your child is in enemy territory, and you have to act accordingly. Monitoring the school can be a partnership with stay-at-home moms if you're a working mom. In other words, make it happen. I'm Stacy Washington. Find out more at StacyOnTheRight.com.
I'm Hank Weinblum with your Word of the Week. Rarely has one word been so prominent in 3 major news stories. The Mueller report.
It was a complete and total exoneration.
The president or his people are saying it's a total exoneration. That contradicts what the special counsel found.
The arrest of Michael Avenatti.
I will be fully exonerated.
And the dropping of charges against Jussie Smollett.
State's attorney's office saying he's not exonerated. He actually did commit this hoax.
Exonerated means you're off the hook, cleared of accusations or blame.
President Trump, I think, finally was exonerated.
Mueller didn't exonerate Trump.
The original meaning of exonerate was take a load off. Take a load off, like a ship could be exonerated of its cargo. The meaning went from removing a physical load to lifting a criminal burden.
Total exoneration.
Exonerating myself from your Word of the Week, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We're also concerned about the effect of the American economy and the nation as a whole from having more than 100,000 people cross illegally this month. If we close the borders, why would we do that? Because we need the people who are working at the legal ports of entry to go patrol, and I'm not making this up, where there's no wall. We were not lying to people when we said that this was an emergency. Very few people believed us, especially folks in the media and the Democrat Party. It is an emergency. I think you saw an interview with Jay Johnson this week on another network that said the 4,000 people per day, which is what we had, I think, one day last week. Look, there's a lot of good ways to help solve this problem. Congress could do it, but they're not going to. Mexico could help us do it. They need to do a little bit more. Honduras could do more. Nicaragua could do more. El Salvador could do more. And if we're going to give these countries hundreds of millions of dollars, we would like them to do more. That, Jake, I would respectfully submit to you, is not an unreasonable position. We could prevent a lot of what's happening on the southern border by preventing people from moving into Mexico in the first place. But let's talk about that for a second. If it's working so well, why are the people still coming? Why are these historic numbers? Again, 100,000 people will cross the border this month alone. That is a crisis. It's a humanitarian crisis. It's a security crisis. I think at least now people are starting to realize that we were not exaggerating a couple months ago when we had this nationwide debate about the wall. So I hear what you're saying, that people say it's working, but the proof is in the numbers. It's not working well enough to help us solve our border crisis.
Yeah, it isn't. And that's Mick Mulvaney, and he's talking about the reasoning behind closing the southern border. And in the interview, he was actually, the questions he was being asked were pretty good. Like, they were reasonable questions. And I don't think there's anybody out there who really wants to see the southern border closed just for the sake of closing it. But if that's what has to happen to stop the influx, 4,000 people a day, back when it was 1,000 people a day crossing illegally, Jay Johnson, who held the same job, Homeland Security, yada, 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 as Kirstjen Nielsen, he said 1,000 a day was overwhelming and they weren't able to do anything about it. Like, it was literally something that they could not work with. So now I want to talk about that major delivery to Turkey, which is it's so important. And I'm also going to cover here today the game changer, China just fulfilling their big promise to President Trump. It has to do with the fentanyl overdoses that have been happening here, the fentanyl poisoning that's been going on. The president has made a wonderful inroad there, so we're going to get to that. But first, they've canceled the F-35 fighter jet equipment deliveries to Turkey. The reason for the cancellation is that Erdogan has decided to purchase a non-NATO missile defense system from Russia. So this is where the whole friends help friends thing comes in. Here in this country, NATO members, I shouldn't say here in this country, members of NATO have agreements on what equipment they use and where they purchase it from. I know, you might be thinking, well, why can't they just buy what they want? Well, obviously, because certain types of hardware, like it's basically, if you're buying from them, you're not buying from us, and you're going to use all of their stuff. So if you want high-speed jets, then buy those from the Russians too. But if you're going to buy our jets, then you would buy our missile defense systems. We would basically, they have agreements on what they sell to each other. And usually the seller, obviously, we're the sellers. We sell the jets to the Israeli army and a number of other countries. And countries that we don't sell to are ones that we may be allies with them, but they're not the kind of allies that wouldn't steal our, property. If we sold them a jet, they wouldn't back engineer it and figure out a way to down it. That's why we don't sell jets to China, and we don't sell them to Russia. So Russia has the S-400 system. So that you got the stealthy F-35 fighter aircraft, and a Pentagon spokesman said that we've basically taken this first concrete step to block delivery of the jet to our NATO ally in light of Ankara's planned purchase of the Russian missile defense system. Now, stopping the shipments means that they're acknowledging that Erdogan has refused to back down from their planned purchase of Russian S-400 missile defense system that would compromise the security of F-35 aircraft. Because think about it. If they decide to buy the S-400, they could literally fly the F-35s and use the S-400 and test the efficiency of the American jet against the Russian hardware. And then, because they're obviously friends with the Russians, the kind of friends who actually share military hardware, they could go back to the Russians and they could say, look, here's how it performed well, and here's how it didn't perform well. Take this information and do with it what you will. Now, we'd have to be, getting up pretty late in the afternoon to think that was a good idea, right? We would want to prevent them from doing that. And it is just me. Obviously I don't get intelligence briefings. I don't work at the White House. But just from my limited amount of knowledge, I'll say limited in that I'm no longer on active duty, I would have never agreed to sell F-35s to Turkey. They sponsor terrorism around the world. Their leader has said many times he wants to establish a caliphate that emanates from his nation, from Turkey. And more than that, they held one of our Americans prisoner for how many years was that they had that pastor locked up, and then they had him on house arrest. They wouldn't let him out of the country. And it took finally President Trump coming around for them to do something about it. So basically, the Turks can change their minds and forego delivery of the S-400. And until they do that, deliveries and activities associated with the stand-up Turkey's F-35 operational capability have been suspended. Turkey has said that their deliveries of the S-400 will commence in July of this year. Now, Reuters is reporting that the next shipment of training equipment, all subsequent shipments of that equipment, the related materials to the F-35 have been canceled. The aircraft is actually built by Lockheed Martin Corporation. And I just wonder, who was actually at the wheel on that decision? We're going to sell F-35s to Turkey. And then somebody at the Trump White House was like, sure, why not? Really, bros? That's how we're rolling? The purchase has been in the works for a long time now, but the finality of it being delivered this year is what kind of brought this all on. So last July, the big news story related to this was that there were going to be 100 F-35 Joint Strike Fighters, and that the Trump administration approved that. And even the Senate, the United States Senate at the time, which was controlled by Republicans back then, if you remember, very narrowly, but they took issue with the deal because of Pastor Brunson's imprisonment and the Russian system being, even back then they knew that it was a possibility that the Russians were going to sell this S-400 missile defense to Turkey. So it seems highly unlikely that Turkey would reverse at this point. I just can't believe we sent them anything. Why? Okay, I'm not gonna belabor that point. So let's go over here. We've got this game changer, China making this decision. So this is pretty different from what happens here in this country. Fentanyl deliveries and dealing in fentanyl here in this country is illegal. But we don't kill people for dealing drugs over here. In China, they do. So China announced on Monday that they would treat all variants of the powerful opioid fentanyl as controlled substances, which they pledged to do late last year when President Jinping actually was here in the U.S. He made that pledge to President Trump. China's export of the drug, which is a family of synthetic opioids, has been blamed for tens of thousands of overdoses in the United States. And it's been a source of tension between the two countries. And more recently, the kind of back and forth over the fentanyl has become a source of contention in the actual trade war. So you've got both nations trying to negotiate their trade opportunities, and America keeps bringing up the fentanyl. So they want to get that out of the way so they can get back to actually working on trade. So this latest step expands restrictions to all fentanyl-related substances, which is effective May 1st. It also plugs gaps that have allowed manufacturers in China to make novel variations of the drug that were not technically illegal. So getting around the actual illegality of fentanyl itself. President Trump had actually said Mr. Z made a promise to him at the Group of 20 meeting in Buenos Aires, and that the formalization of that step is a game changer. So the president's been tweeting at China about how they're killing our children and destroying our country. And I really appreciate him doing that. Not just talking about it through diplomatic channels, but actually making it a public issue on online social media, which the Chinese hate to be embarrassed in any way. And so it's extremely embarrassing for the president of the United States to be accusing them of killing Americans through illegal drug dealing. It just looks horrible for them. And they're very sensitive to that. So, Oh, one more thing. Smoke is over here on the live stream, and he said Erdogan hates Israel. Yeah. I mean, I just don't understand why we would ever sell them jets. What's to say they wouldn't take the jets that we sell them, the stealthy jets, and use them against our ally, Israel? I just don't understand. So I think it's smart not to. And, you know, it's also smart for the president to, on the foreign policy front, really get out there ahead of this and be proactive in making sure that, you know, if China has something they can do to stop fentanyl, then they should stop it before it ever even gets close to our shores. Now, we know we have transnational, they're terror organizations, in my opinion, these Chinese drug cartels. And, you know, they're mixing and making and doing all kinds of importation of illegal substances. And that's another problem we have to hit on. But to get the biggest player out of the market by having China make all of these variations illegal, it's just a huge win for us as a country. So what I'm interested in doing is I want to see the president do more of this. And I think he will. Obviously, the obstruction of the Democrats has been very effective, but it has not stopped the president from getting some of the things done that he promised. The border is the biggest issue. And I just encourage you again to please join in praying about that when you pray over your food, or maybe you're already in a Bible study and you could bring it up as an issue that needs to be solved. And everyone in your Bible study may not be on the right politically, but I think we could all agree you don't want to see thousands, tens of thousands of people trapped in detention centers at the southern border. Apparently yesterday or over the weekend, a bunch of migrants in the Tijuana detention facility set a mattress on fire, and they were protesting within the actual detention center because they expect to come here, be interviewed, and then be released into the country. They honestly do not even care anything about the legal standards for, getting into the country. Like legal immigration, forget it. They feel like they're on the same continent we're on. They deserve to get up in here, and we should just let them. All right, we have a couple minutes left. We can take a caller. Darius in North Carolina. Thank you for calling the show today. Hello. Thanks for calling in. Uh-oh. It looks like we had a little bit of audio difficulty with him. So thank you for calling, and I hope we can get that rectified. But I'm just interested in seeing the president be able to do more of his agenda. You know, the Republicans obstructed President Obama, right? But they weren't as effective as I feel like they could have been, because he was still able to pass Obamacare. He was still able to take gay marriage from something that even same-sex couples are saying, well, we just want to be able to have the right to love who we want to love. And now now they're persecuting Christians over not wanting to do business for gay weddings and things like that. The redefinition of marriage is, in my opinion, it's the worst thing that President Obama ushered into this country. He was able to do that even when he wasn't in charge of all parts of Congress. He didn't have a lock, and he was still able to do that. He just evolved on it. And then my daughters told me at dinner, this is the best way for me to be. So again, we want to see the president be able to do his agenda, to get his agenda passed. And some of it is undoing what President Obama did, and some of it is new stuff that only President Trump could do from his position as a business person. I think it's right and good for us to continue to pray for him, obviously, and to pray for his administration. I especially think we should be praying for the Conway family, because they have a lot of turmoil going on. And I hate to see, the public disagreements that they're having in their marriage over where she works. And I don't know what the solution is to that, but we should be praying for them as well. And then we just have to trust God that he's in control, because he is. And that's reason in enough of itself to be rejoicing and getting our shoulder dances on. So, all right. Thank you so much for being here today. If you are leaving us now, God bless from the Heartland. If you're sticking around, One News Now news and information is up next. Keep it here.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Hey, I'm Miki, co-host of Aaron the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. I want to invite you to be part of our online chat community we've affectionately called The Churban. While you listen to your favorite programs, you have the opportunity to communicate in real time with the hosts of those programs and other Urban Family listeners. Find out what the talk is all about. Become a Churbanite at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, almost a few. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders is defending President Trump's threat to close the U.S.-Mexican border.
And it looks like we're going to have to move more, which will force those lines to go longer to cross the border. And eventually, it may be that it's the best decision that we close the border.
Talking with reporters today, Sanders again argued that there is a legitimate security and humanitarian crisis at the southern border. She said the situation is at a breaking point and accused Democrats of favoring open borders.
Our first choice would be for Democrats to actually sit down with us and help fix a broken system to address the national security and humanitarian crisis that exists at our border.
The president is demanding that Mexico stop migrants headed to the U.S. He has also warned Mexico to halt migrant caravans from Central America. Tensions continue to rise between India and Pakistan over the disputed Kashmir region. Benjamin Hall reports.
Pakistan and India have traded fire in the disputed Himalayan region of Kashmir again, leaving 7 people dead. The fatalities were some of the highest since tensions flared between the rival nuclear-armed nations in February, when a suicide bombing killed 40 Indian troops and Pakistan shot down an Indian fighter jet, capturing the pilot. Pakistan's military said Indian troops targeted its military positions overnight in the border town of Rakchakri, and that Pakistan responded in kind. Kashmir remains a key flashpoint in the volatile region amid constant fears the rivalry could break into all-out war. In London, Benjamin Hall, Fox News.
The national defense analyst says he is not surprised that the German right leads the way in supporting Israel. Chad Groening has more.
The Washington Examiner reports that recently the German Free Democrats Party submitted a resolution in the Bundestag that called out the anti-Israel bias of United Nations institutions and urged the German government to oppose this ongoing practice. In fact, Germany supported 16 of 21 anti-Israel resolutions before the UN General Assembly. The Free Democrats' resolution called for Berlin to commit to opposing biased UN resolutions and to protect Israel from unfair treatment by the UN. But German lawmakers soundly rejected the resolution except for the Free Democrats and the controversial anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany, who overwhelmingly supported it. Bob McGinnis is a senior fellow for national security at the Family Research Council and author of Alliance of Evil. He is not surprised how the AfD voted.
The AfD is pro-Israel, I think, because of political calculation. They've been very anti-immigrant out of the Middle East and North Africa and have really captured the right in that country, as have Le Pen and her organization there in France, and then the Freedom Party in Austria and other parties around Western Europe. So there is a growing element of resentment, but a lot of anti-Semitism is alive and well, and that's evidenced in the UN voting by the German government and, of course, the Bundestag, what they said the other day.
I'm Chad Groening.
We've all received those phone calls saying we owe money to the IRS. You'll be happy to know there is something being done about it. Bill Zimfer has more.
Yes, federal officials are trying to crack down on the scammers. Recently, an Indian citizen was sentenced to over 8 years in prison here for taking part in an India-based call center scam in which operators impersonated tax officials. He and 4 others had entered guilty pleas to the charges. Another of the defendants received 15 months in prison. 3 others are awaiting sentencing. Bill Zimfer, NBC News Radio.
According to TripAdvisor, Singapore Airlines has now won 2 straight Traveler's Choice Awards for the best airline.
They have beds, they've got luxurious chairs, they're known for their food, so they really got high ratings and reviews on TripAdvisor. Coming in second, Qatar Airways, followed by EVA Air, Emirates, and Japan Airlines. That's rounding out the top 5 best airlines in the world. But here in the U.S., the best airline, that goes to Southwest Airlines. The best major airline, that goes to Delta. Best midsize, that is Alaska Airlines. And the best low-cost airline, Southwest once again.
That's Fox Business Network's Tracy Carrasco reporting. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called TuneIn. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Yeah, well, what I learned during the campaign is that there's a big difference between what people in America care about and what people in Washington or in the media care about.
We need to have the Attorney General redact it to make sure there's no national security classified material, no grand jury minutes, and I would submit nothing that is critical of people who have not been indicted and haven't had an opportunity to respond.
Mr. Barr gets to handle this. That's how the law works. And Mr. Barr has made it clear that he's going to release it to Congress before he shows it to us. That's his decision. So we're going to let the system work.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Yes, it's me. And I'm just giggling a little bit because if you go to stacyontheright.com, you can see the live stream there. Because I just figured out how to embed a video that's actually a live stream. Probably not a huge thing to a lot of different people, but for me, I'm feeling a little accomplished in this moment. So it's over there. And also that amazing list of President Trump's accomplishments. And it is by no means comprehensive, meaning everything. It's what I was able to gather. We've covered this before on the show, and it was a really popular topic. And that's why I thought, you know what? Instead of just reading it on the air, I should throw it over there at stacyontheright.com so you can actually find it for yourself. And each one is individually typed out on its own line, so you could literally copy and paste it, throw it up on Twitter, just post a few of them on Facebook. And I wouldn't share them if they weren't factually accurate. It would be very time consuming to put each link on there, but I do list the sources of where I got the information, which is fantastic. And you can also, I know some people get triggered, but if you are not easily triggered, you can go to the president's Twitter feed, and he often tweets out accomplishments and things as they go on that he's been able to do, on a day-to-day basis. So in any case, it's good news, and I think it's great to share. And so I'd be so happy if you would join me in celebrating what he's been able to do so far. God is good. He's giving us good things. The sun rises on the good and the bad. The Bible says it rises on the righteous and the evil. So we all get to enjoy the same sunshine, which, by the way, I'm looking out my window here. I can't tell. I'm not sure if that's basically, it's a bright day, but it's not a sunny day anymore. I think the sun was out a little earlier. And I just want to say thank God for that too. Every day that we get the sun here in the Midwest, we need to be so grateful because of this winter that we've just survived. I really can't believe that's the winter that we had. And it's supposed to be garden weather this Saturday. This Saturday in the Midwest, we're supposed to have temperatures in the 70s, 73 here for the St. Louis Metro, which means, I'm just going to call it out. Y'all know what's about to happen. If you buy your gardening stuff from Lowe's or Home Depot, the line is going to be so long, and everyone's going to be wearing workout clothes like they've just been working out when they're really there to buy garden stuff, and they're going to go fill up their hanging baskets and put some things in their garden. And I just encourage you, because I do enjoy Lowe's and Home Depot. Also remember your local plant nurseries. They might not be as crowded, and you can get some good deals on plant materials. And this year, I'm branching out, y'all. You heard it here first. I'm actually going to do 1 tomato bush and 2 bell pepper bushes. Because last year I had 1 bell pepper bush and 1 tomato bush, and they survived. First of all, they survived. If you were following me on Instagram last year, you saw that I posted pictures of those. And honestly, I'd killed so many tomato bushes in the past, or they didn't bear any fruit, that I just figured I couldn't make them grow. And I'm pretty good in the garden, but with the food, I just wasn't getting any success. Well, I have a couple of herb plants that I've kept alive over the winter. And last summer was my first time having food garden that actually survived and produced vegetables that we could eat. So this year I'm branching out. I'm going to do a little more. I know you guys are probably thinking, for those of you who grow food all the time, you're like, really? Yeah, that's where I'm at. So anyway, here on hour 2 of the program, and we're welcome. We love your calls. Call in, chat with us if you want to. Call lines are open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. We have Celeste Katz, she's a former reporter for Newsweek. She's been on the show many times before, political commentator. She's going to join us and talk about the 2020 presidential candidates on the left. And we're also going to be covering the FISA abuse thing. The Trump kids, they're now public enemy number 1 without collusion, and the narrative about how the president's a criminal. Now they have to try to criminalize the kids. I know they're adults, but you get what I'm saying. So what we are going to do is we're also going to get into an Egyptian man, a man who he speaks only Arabic. He doesn't speak any English. He tried to kidnap this lady's child in the Huntington Mall. He literally picked up her 5-year-old daughter and tried to haul her off. And guess how she got him to stop? I'm going to leave that ... for you and let you marinate on that a little bit. But you can guess. You haven't just met me. You know how I am on the show. You know what she did. So we'll talk about that in the third segment. Right now, I want to talk about the FISA abuse scandal, which it's a huge scandal. It's what we've seen the Democrats use to weaponize the FBI and other agencies. They did that because they didn't like the election of President Trump. They didn't want him to be the president, and so they started investigating him, thinking he was a dirty dealer. Do y'all remember? I am a mom, so I'm going to have to engage in a little bit of I told you so. Do y'all remember on the air, for those who have been listening that long, back in 2016 when I said everybody thinks that President Trump, because he has a potty mouth and, he's been married a few times, they think that he's not a clean dealer in business. And it's true, he's had some bankruptcies and, et cetera. But yeah, they think he's a dirty dog. But I actually highlighted the fact that the president, he doesn't drink alcohol. He has a potty mouth for sure, but he's not that typical under dealer guy. Like, he's the one who, do you guys remember the story? His limousine was broken down on the side of the road, and it was because of a tire. One of the tires on the limousine had blown, and his driver was out there trying to change the tire by himself, and this couple pulled over in their truck, and he was like, dude, let me help you. And he said, Trump, I know who you are. You're Trump. He said, you're dressed up. Don't get out. Stay there. Let us help your driver get the tire fixed. And so the guy in the truck helped the driver, and they swapped the tire out. And Donald Trump asked him his name and his phone number. He said, I want to thank you. He's like, no thanks are owed. It's the right thing to do. When you see someone broken down the side of the road, just help them. And the wife was like, wow, we got to meet Donald Trump. So they shook hands, and they went on their merry way in their truck, and Donald Trump went off in his car. Well, later, the couple, they got a notification that Donald Trump had paid off their mortgage. He paid their mortgage off because they stopped and helped him when his tire was busted. So, Donald Trump is not a saint. None of us are. Unless you say, obviously we're clothed in white. We're a royal priesthood. We are saints when we come to know the Lord as our Savior. Obviously, he is sanctifying us every day. But as far as every person, that may be rich or does nice things for people never being able to do anything wrong, well, we know that's not true. But I just said back then, I said, people are probably going to be surprised to find out that Donald Trump he's not a crook. He just does business. He likes doing business. And that's what we've seen here. He didn't collude with the Russians. He's not a Russian agent. He didn't even obstruct justice. I know that that's left up to, he's not exonerating him, but we had Professor Grossman explain that concept to us yesterday. So, be that as it may. The FISA abuse, that's a huge problem, because what they did to Donald Trump, they can do to any American. They can say, you know what? She spoke to a foreigner. She spoke to a foreign national. Now we need to listen to her, because we were listening to the foreign national. Now we need, you see what I'm saying? You could be doing something legitimate. In fact, you probably are. and you're having a conversation about something, and then all of a sudden now you're the subject of a FISA application. Now they're listening to you, and they're not giving you your constitutionally protected rights. Let's listen to Ned Ryan. It's number 3.
I think it's deeply irresponsible. I see people writing opinion pieces saying we need to move on. People that are writing those things, I think, have basically decided they're giving up on the civil liberties of the American people. They're accepting the beginnings of a police state, and they're really saying that we should accept the demise of our republic. You know, there needs to be a reckoning. There need to be consequences. These men, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, massively abused the great trust and power that they were given in how they targeted a candidate and then a sitting president of the United States. There need to be consequences. We need to say that this is unacceptable, not only for Republican presidents moving forward, but for Democratic presidents as well. There have to be consequences. And for there to be a healing in this process, there have to be investigations.
Yeah.
I think these people can be charged with crimes. To falsify FISA applications is a crime, and there need to be consequences for that.
So there do need to be consequences, because without consequences, lawlessness reigns supreme. And that's the difference between a tin pot dictatorship and a banana republic and our country. Those first two that I listed, you don't want to live there, because everything is capricious and arbitrary, and you are never protected from any of those kinds of just random, ham-handed actions that anyone can take against you. You're unpopular all of a sudden, then they're going to prosecute you and do all kinds of crazy stuff to you. And that is not the way we want to live. We believe in the rule of law. And it's a part of our social compact that people really take for granted. But you know what chips away at it? Yeah, I'm going to have to go there. Sorry, if you're going to get triggered by this, get triggered. Don't email me, but get triggered. Feel free to experience the triggering in its full glory, because here it comes. When people come into the country illegally and they're not deported because they came here out of love, or you feel some kind of way in your chest, and so that feeling negates the illegality of their action, then that gets everybody who sees that says, well, if they're going to be here illegally, I might as well bring my cousin and my so-and-so over here illegally. When you do that, it also tells employers, you know what, these 300 or so illegals I'm employing under the table, so I don't have to pay their Social Security and all of that. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm just gonna let it go, because everybody's doing it. When everybody's doing it, then you start to reap the consequences of everybody doing it, which is our social networks are just not social networks, but our social safety systems like Medicare, Medicaid, our hospitals, the emergency rooms, they get overtaxed because the burden isn't commensurate with what's being paid in. You know, it's funny, people don't think of it this way, but if you really look at the way America is set up, it's set up like we're all in the family. It's set up like we've agreed to, tacitly, we've agreed to take care of each other. Now, we can argue about the constitutionality of the income tax. I think those are great conversations for us to have. But as it stands now, I'm just talking about the lay of the land right here, right now. We have agreed as Americans that our taxes all go into the local and then state and then federal government. And then the elected representatives, not a democracy, not mob rule, elected representatives then make decisions about what to do with that money. And when they see a need, an area that's poverty stricken, or a group of people who can't take care of themselves, like people who are disabled, if you can prove you're disabled, then all of us are agreeing to take care of individuals who are disabled to a certain extent through programs that we all know and pay for. So when we have that tacit agreement and we're in a social compact with each other and we operate our country that way, when outsiders come in and don't contribute to that system, or they contribute to it in whatever way because everybody pays some taxes. If you're buying things anywhere where there's tax applied to your purchase, you're paying some taxes. But you're maybe paying in, whenever you buy something at these tax increment financed shopping centers, you're paying some tax on your food in some states, and some, like in Missouri, we don't pay tax on food. But you're paying, but you're in the country illegally. So you being in the country illegally means first of all, the job you're working, that's a job that a citizen would have worked. And miss me with all these prognostications about how they do work Americans won't do. That's just a bald-faced lie from the pit of hell. So while you're sitting up talking about I'm Satan, look at yourself. Worry about yourself. Take care of that beam that's in your own eye. You are lying. And then the last part of it is people who are here illegally, one of the first things they do is they have a baby. That anchor baby has citizenship in America. It's a baby that wouldn't have been born here. And y'all know I'm as pro-life as it gets, but we're not talking about killing anybody. We're talking about people being here that should not be here in the first place. So all of us agree to pay for the disabled, for people who are low income. We agree to pay into tax and give, tax credits to people who have children. We all get those. If you have a child and you pay taxes and you file a tax return, you get an earned income tax credit. Illegals get those too, and they can't claim babies outside the country. Can you see how the strain begins to bear on us and then we begin to reap what we've sown? Lawlessness? Yes, you can see that. All right, so when we get back, we'll have Celeste Katz with us. Stay there.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way, but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your healthcare. It's MediShare, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason MediShare is 400,000 people strong, it just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining MediShare for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining MediShare and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Thomas Edsall, writing in the New York Times, cites a number of academic studies that demonstrate what most of us have already seen. Partisan hate is on the increase. One academic paper with the title Lethal Mass Partisanship found that just over 42% of the people in each political party views the opposition as downright evil. He then concludes that 48 million voters who cast ballots in the 2016 election believe that members of the opposition party are in league with the devil. He also cites another arresting statistic. What if the opposing party wins the 2020 election? How much do you feel violence would be justified then? The study found that 18% of Democrats and 13% of Republicans said violence would be justified on a scale ranging from a little to a lot. Later in his commentary, he cites another academic study that concludes that on both sides of the political aisle, the best informed voters are by far the most partisan. We would expect that well-educated, well-informed people might be able to pull the electorate out of this morass. David French, writing in National Review, repeats this idea. He says in a time of crisis, American citizens often look for guidance and take their cues from the subset of American citizens who are most engaged and informed. Yet study after study is now showing that this cohort of Americans is driving the engine of American division. If we're to turn this around, we need pastors and Christian leaders working in the political arena to set an example. Political thought leaders are the ones driving much of the division and partisan hate in America. Christian leaders should not give into this division and conflict, but provide examples of grace and civility. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey there, welcome to the program. You can find out more at stacyontheright.com. And if you hit the subscribe button, you will get occasional missives from me because I've not been sending out the newsletter once a week. I haven't. I've sent out alerts and I've sent out the newsletter, but it doesn't happen every week. So you will get sporadic updates from me. And you can trust me that your email address will never be shared or sold or anything like that because honestly, that's too much work for me to find somebody to sell it to and then to make it happen. And they really couldn't pay me enough for me to waste my time doing that. So You'll only get stuff from me. And that'll be occasionally. So if you want to sign up, if you're already a WordPress user or you have a WordPress account, you can sign up to get notifications whenever I post something. But I just warn you, like last night I posted like 12 things, and then I'll go for weeks without posting anything. So I'm going to try to be a little more religious about that, getting stuff in on a regular basis. But if you sign up, I think you'll enjoy it. So feel free to do that. Also, hit the subscribe button over at urbanfamilytalk.com and afr.net. We'd love to have you there. It's my pleasure to welcome our next guest. It's Celeste Katz. She's a political commentator, former reporter for Newsweek. Celeste, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So let's talk about this. 2020, the Democrats have a lot of people running. They're having a lot of fun over there.
Yeah, I noticed that you had some stuff up about Joe Biden's whole situation with him. I'm keeping an eye on that, certainly. The fundraising is interesting, but the Biden story is quite something, yeah.
Yeah, so it keeps getting more interesting because, Celeste, I've seen a lot of pictures of Joe Biden, furtively squeezing the shoulders and smiling into people's faces uncomfortably close, kissing. I've even seen a little of the lip kissing, like once. I've seen one picture of that. Now the pictures are surfacing where his wife kisses their friends on the lips, which I only know one. They're not a couple, but they're two people who used to work together, and I'd seen them at events kissing each other on the mouth, and not like French kissing, but just like, a peck on the lips to greet each other and to leave when they would leave. And they were married to other people. And they would do that in full view of everyone else. Like, you're just standing there talking, you glance over and you see them saying goodbye, and then they would just kiss on the lips and part ways. And I've seen it before, but this is weird. Mrs. Biden kisses people on the lips. Joe kisses people on the lips. They're very affectionate. That's what it's being called. Does this stand up for 2020 or what? I mean, what do you think happens here?
It's really, I'm not trying to be evasive, but it's really hard to say. I think that to your point earlier, look, different people have different practices, different cultures, different societies have different mores and folkways, as they call them. Americans perhaps stand further away from each other when we talk to each other than in other cultures where the idea of quote-unquote personal space or touching people is different. Now, in this environment, though, Joe Biden being sort of the presumptive front runner and having a lot of pressure on him and a lot of people already in the contest, this is just something he doesn't need right now. I mean, that's the bottom line, is whether there are some people who have come out in support of him and just saying that, he happens to be sort of a touchy-feely person, that he's not like a predator, and other people saying, look, he did put his hands on me or he kissed me or hugged me and I felt uncomfortable. I don't think that you can dismiss either side of that because it's a matter of personal interpretation. But this is just not a hassle he needs right now at all. He doesn't need to be talking about this. I don't think it helps him in any way at all. And while he's trying to put out this fire, everyone else is out there raising money and getting on with their lives.
So first of all, Celeste, I don't think that was evasive at all. I went to get your opinion on it because it's a hard question to answer. Will this have an impact? Now, if this was 6 months ago or whatever that was when Kavanaugh was getting raked over the coals for all these, kind of hearsay things that were 30 some odd years old, I'd say, wow, what a double standard. But he survived that. He's on the Supreme Court. It was brutal. It was horrifying for his family. But those were unsubstantiated claims, and now he's on the Supreme Court. I could theoretically see, because of Joe Biden's popularity, him weathering this storm, but it looks like Democratic leadership has issued a clarion call for him to step aside. They had a CNN commentator. She's an actual contributor to CNN, so she's paid to be there. She said it's not his time. And I felt like that was kind of like a little missile launched over the battlements from the leadership of the DNC when she said that. It seemed like it was coming from more than just her.
Yeah, I think that if you look at what Nancy Pelosi has said now, look, there's sort of a Nancy Pelosi wing of the party, and there's some resistance to her, although she seems to mostly have her conference in order compared to a few months ago. But she says, look, this is not something you really want to do. She says she doesn't think it's disqualifying, but he really has to be more aware of the environment and of the fact that this is just that kind of behavior, maybe even if it's not deliberately, being skeevy or anything. I don't know, whatever word you want to call it.
Right.
Just don't do that. Don't touch people that way. Don't put your hands on people. Just don't. I mean, sort of like, kindergarten stuff, like no fighting, no biting type of thing.
Right.
So,
I saw the clip of her. She said she's a straight arm club. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
She said, I'm a member of the straight arm club. Act like you have a cold. Act like I have a cold. So how would you greet a person with a cold? Well, you'd stick your arm straight out to keep them far away from you because you don't want their misty germs getting on you. And you'd shake hands, and that would be the end of it. And she said he should become a member of the straight arm club. But this is a habit that he has cultivated for 40 years. How long has he been in public office? Like, I don't see him changing.
Yeah, his whole adult life, basically, yeah. I mean, he's, and look, he is not, by far, I would say, the only politician who behaves like that. I was just discussing this recently on a program on Sirius XM where we were talking about what it's like to cover politics as a woman. And, male reporters meet male politicians, they shake hands, right?
Yeah.
As a female reporter, you come up to a male politician and maybe they want to hug you or they want to give you a kiss on the cheek because that's how men greet women. Now, is that appropriate? Some people I think are more bothered by it or less bothered by it. But it is a fact. I mean, I have tried literally that straight arm tactic that you mentioned. And I said, how about it just a handshake, right? And I've had a male politician say to me, what, I don't get a hug? And you kind of want to be like, no, you don't. I mean, I did an interview. What is the issue?
Celeste is
so,
no kissing, no hugging. I love it.
It's a real, seriously, for female reporters, and I am by far not the only female political reporter who's had this experience. I think certainly worse things happen than that. But so as far as Biden goes, it's just the fact that this is happening right now, maybe it's not anything nefarious on his part. I don't know. Again, that's a matter of how people interpreted it, who experienced it. That's not for me to say. But the fact that you and I are on the radio talking about this, instead of talking about what he would do on health care or how many millions of dollars he's going to raise the first week after his announcement. So, again, just probably not where he wants to be right now.
I tend to agree with you that it's getting more and more embarrassing, right? So let's just say it's like you and I, we're both like tip of the spear for information gathering. So we've seen a lot of the pictures, and most of those pictures are ones from the Obama administration where he was the vice president, and a lot of people came through there to the White House, and he'd always be there. And every single time he's hugging, kissing, caressing everybody from the little girls all the way up to the old, grannies. He's just comforting everyone and experiencing them and what he calls appreciating them. He's doing this to all of the women in residence. But now, not only are you and I discussing this instead of his policies, but now there's pictures on Drudge of him kissing on the mouth and others, his wife kissing on the mouth, and he's kissing other people's wives while they're standing there and they're kissing on the mouth. And so it becomes one of those things where I'm almost waiting, like, so we've seen like hugging and hair sniffing, and we've seen, cupping the chin and all that. And now we're seeing kissing on the mouth. What more is there? Like, I'm just waiting. What will I see tomorrow, Celeste? What will my eyes feast upon tomorrow?
Look, we've been through things like this, and you go through these things in many campaigns. We certainly saw it with President Trump. He had, explosive allegations against him, the subsequent scandals, the Access Hollywood tape, where we heard him making these remarks. Again, you can interpret those things as you want, but again, the sort of sad fact of it all is that it's really a distraction from the stuff that we should be talking about. I mean, people in this country, want to be able to pay off their student loans or get better jobs or have lower taxes or have better health care, whatever it is. Like, that essentially is what people probably should be focusing on, and who has the best plans for that in the Democratic primary and then in a general election matchup, presumably with the president, unless something truly bizarre happens there. And is this sort of like where we as Americans want to be, talking about these things on either side of the aisle? It's an important discussion to have about, Me Too and about how women are treated in the society. Like, I'm okay with that, but this election is such a high stakes matter that I hope that we don't get too consumed by issues like this. I think the best thing for everybody to do is confront it head on and address it and, make their decisions from there, not dwell on it as if it's the only thing that is going to matter in 2020, because it's not.
Well, it won't matter as much in 2020, but I think the reason it matters now is because the polls show him with a lion's share of support from Democrats. 30% of Democrats would prefer to see Joe Biden be the nominee. And so for people who are going up against him, they're in the back rooms looking at those poll numbers and saying, not kissing people on the lips, he's not. And they're behind a lot of this. I don't think this is enemy fire from Republicans. This is a strictly Democratic-led effort to either bring him to the front, because there are definitely factions of support on the Democratic side that are very strongly for Joe Biden. But there's a lot of people who would prefer to see Bernie Sanders. There's that whole wing of the party. And then there's the Kamala Harris wing, which is bigger than the poll numbers suggest, because they're hoping to do a similar rollout for her as the one that was done for Barack Obama, who was largely unknown and definitely not a contender against the Clinton juggernaut. But he literally just swept Hillary Clinton out of the way like she was a political neophyte. And he did that through a groundswell of support that came from every corner and really overwhelmed the Clinton machine and the kind of establishment Democrats. And they hope to do the same thing with Kamala Harris. So it is important for them, in order to make that happen, to weaken Joe Biden so that she can come in and be that person to kind of mop up his support and gather it to herself. You mentioned other candidates and issues that we could talk about. I saw a story about Elizabeth Warren's, it's either her campaign manager or her chief fundraiser, quitting because I guess they're not raising money. How do you see her campaign fleshing out?
Well, it's very challenging when you have somebody like Bernie Sanders, who obviously didn't wait as long as Joe Biden, but it wasn't entirely clear from the beginning if he was really going to get in or really not. And once he did, of course, he raised this incredible amount of money in a very, very short amount of time. And I think that is a problem for Elizabeth Warren, because they are fairly close, or closer than others are, to each other on the political spectrum in terms of being on the far left, in terms of their attitude towards, government versus private industry, or, government attitudes towards, say, banks and things like that. So that plus this sort of, again, like unpleasant controversy or distracting controversy over her claims of Native American heritage and so on. Mm-hmm. It's just, this is a big, big fight. It's a lot of people competing for this spot and more people getting in. So for Elizabeth Warren, I think it's sort of like, I think that she is enjoying some currency, that there are people who like what she has to say, but it's also a moment of soul searching, I think, for the Democratic Party. It's like, if you look at what the rhetoric is of the Democratic Party, and frankly also of the Republican Party in some ways, it says, they want to have more diversity. They want to have more young people, more women, more people of different backgrounds and so on. But the top three, 2 or 3 prospects on the Democratic side are older white men. You have Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, people interested in Beto O'Rourke, and then you have Kamala Harris in there, Elizabeth Warren, and then a lot of the other people further and further down, single digits. So for the entire party, it's really a question of like, how does the party want to go up against President Trump? Do they want to have a ticket that reflects a growing part of the electorate, which is younger people and people who are not white? Because that's where the country is going. There are an equal or greater number of millennials qualified to vote than baby boomers now. And that was true as of the last election. That was the 69 million sort of tipping point? Or do they want to go with sort of the traditional reliable voter strategy, which is that older people tend to vote more than younger people? So for all these candidates, it's a matter of sort of standing out. And I think that at least in your question about Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders makes it a little bit harder for her to stand out just because they are fairly similar on a lot of the sort of big economic and social issues that Democratic primary voters are looking at.
Wow. That was pretty perfect. You stopped talking and the music came on. It's like you've done this before, Celeste Katz.
Magic. We'll have to have you on WBAI soon.
Yeah, you totally need to have me on there. Yeah, let's reciprocate. I love having you on, and I love to see your name pop up on the calendar. So thank you for your time today, Celeste Katz, political talk show host, former reporter for Newsweek, political commentator, all-around cool chick. Thank you for your time today.
Always a pleasure.
All right, talk to you again soon. Hey, we'll be back with more after these messages. Stay right there.
Here's what you've missed on Airing the Addisons.
This article here from just last year, one of the more recent articles on snoozing, says that when you snooze on a regular basis, among other things that happens to your body, you become addicted to snoozing. Please don't do that.
What? I'm agreeing with the article.
No, but your agreement was as if you already knew that. You didn't know that snoozing was addictive.
It makes sense, though. That's what the was, because people who snooze, they love, like, they can't not do it. That makes sense.
Everyone listening to this program, including your wife, knows that they is a synonym for Miki.
No, they.
That's exactly what you mean. And everybody knows it. And when I say everybody, I mean me. That's my synonym for me. So
I'm talking about they
article.
who snooze.
They who snooze. Is that scripture?
Airing the Addisons. Weekday morning, 6 to 8 Central on Urban Family Talk.
On the Hour of Intercession, we have guests on a regular basis, and sometimes our guests have titles like doctor or pastor, but sometimes they have no title at all.
Pastor Joseph Parker of the Hour of Intercession.
One powerful truth to recognize is that every believer has a testimony, and they can teach you something about prayer as they share their own personal prayer journey.
Listen weekday afternoons at 1 Central here on Urban Family Talk.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32, it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
America's talking to Fox News.
The Mueller report says President Trump did not collude with Russia, and Attorney General William Barr says there was no obstruction of justice. How do you feel?
To me, the story in my mind is you've got 5, 6, 7 people from the president's campaign that are in jail for violating the law. That's what's important.
I'm not okay with how much money we wasted, our tax money. He's there to do the job. Let him do the job. Give him support. Let him do his job. If he fails at his job, he fails at his job, but he shouldn't fail at his job because his own country turned against him.
I'm very, very excited. I don't think Donald Trump was involved with it, and I'm glad that everything came out negative.
The president's behavior is so outrageous, and the people who work for him, their behavior is so outrageous, that the turmoil is going to continue. The only question is whether the focus is on the Mueller report. This is not going to stop. I don't actually think they should impeach the president. I think that's a waste of time. But I do think he needs to be severely slapped down, and this report did not do it.
America's talking to Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Yeah, well, I can't comment for the White House's process, but what I can say is that over the last 2 years that I've been here, I've been accused of all different types of things, and all of those things have turned out to be false. We've had a lot of crazy accusations, like that we colluded with Russia. I complied with all the different investigations, whether it be the Senate, the House, the special counsel. I've sat for nearly 20 hours of interviews with them. When I came to Washington, I had a very successful business career. I had extensive holdings. I disclosed all my holdings to the Office of Government Ethics, and what I did with that is they told me what to divest, what to keep, what rules to follow. Look, I can say that in the White House, I work with some phenomenal people, and I think over the last 2 years, the president's done a phenomenal job of identifying what are our national security priorities. He's had a great team in place that are helping implement it, and I hope I've played a good part in pushing those objectives forward. And I think because of the president's leadership, the world is safer today.
Yeah, because of the president's leadership, the world is safer today. That was Jared Kushner. He says he's been accused of all sorts of crazy things. And yeah, I feel bad for them. It's not kind of. I feel badly about how they've been treated, because the normal reaction for adult kids who have the kind of backgrounds that they all have stellar educations, and they have backgrounds in business, and they've been very successful before their father was ever elected to the presidency. The natural reaction would be, in some families, obviously they would stay back. They'd stay in New York, and they would, continue to do what they're doing. And a couple of the sons have done that. Eric Trump and Donald Jr. have really taken over the running of the company. But for Ivanka, who's always wanted to have a hand in policy pertaining to women, and her husband, they're more moderate than I am. Obviously, they're politically moderate, especially on the social issues. But a lot of what they're trying to do in Washington, D.C., these are long-term projects and goals that they've worked on. The prison reform, Jared Kushner's father went to prison for some, financial, he did some stuff. He was an investor, a wealth manager, et cetera. And I can't stress enough that most families, whether it was an active role like the one that Ivanka and Jared have taken, or if it was a more passive role like Eric and Don Jr., do not work in the White House. They don't, really do a lot of policy stuff, but they do comment, and they go on television, and they support their father. They've always been public figures, the whole lot of them. They've always maintained active social media accounts, and so it's not a surprise to see them move into Washington, D.C. and contribute in that way. And so it's just it's kind of crazy that they're now going to be targets. But I guess a Democrat would say to me, and they have in the past said, well, if they would have stayed in the private sector, then they wouldn't be targets. But I tend to disagree with that. I think they would still be targets, even if they were in Washington or in New York still, living in their original homes and, just going out and riding around in their town cars. They would still be targets. And that's why you don't see them going to New York as often anymore, because when they go to Manhattan, it snarls up traffic and everything. And I don't know if you saw, I'm not discussing on the show today, but I'll just mention New York has become the first city in the United States to implement a European-style, it's basically a tax or a fee to be able to enter a certain part of the city, because they want to reduce congestion and encourage people to, instead of driving a car into Manhattan, they want you to take a, public transportation mode, so the subway. Now, if you've seen any of the stories about what the subways are like in New York now, basically just filled with homeless people, naked homeless people, public restroom, and you're right there on the subway. It's just terrible. And the smell is so outrageous that a lot of people who are riding the subway are saying, I can't tolerate that. I can't be in that smell. I'm trying to go to work. So they're saying that this tax will net them billions of dollars that they'll be able to use to update and modernize the subway system. And I just encourage you, if you're living in New York City, get out. Move out to a part of the country that is not just crammed with people. The image that they had on the story was like all these cars piled up on top of each other. It looks almost impossible to navigate. And I've been to New York before, so this isn't, me talking from the Midwest and I've never been there. I've been a lot of times, and we went on a family vacation there as well. And we found it to be kind of impossible to catch a cab together as 5 people, because most of the cabs are set up to carry 4 total, 2 on the back seat, 1 in the front seat, and the driver. So we really had a hard time catching a cab. And that was, a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago when we went on that trip to New York. So I just, again, if you're living in New York, try to, consider moving someplace else. The cost of living is lower. The people are nice. I'm sure New Yorkers are nice. I've met tons of nice New Yorkers. but there's an opportunity for you to get away from there and really appreciate. So I just encourage that. So let's go to the phones. We have Dave. Dave, thank you for calling in today.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Yeah, I had called. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, it's your time. What's your comment?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had called. You were talking earlier about the illegal immigrants and how they take things away from Americans. And you know, I'm a 59-year-old guy. I'm an Air Force veteran.
Oh, thank you for your service.
I'm on Social Security disability, and I make $1,200 a month, and they give me $15 a month in food stamps. And I have some bad teeth. I'm diabetic, and the VA will not pull my teeth because I don't fit into the proper time bracket of when I enlisted. And I make like $4 too much to qualify for a state Medicaid. You know, the VA's whole deal is these teeth keep getting infected, and they just throw antibiotics at me. You know, and all I'm trying to do is, you know, I just need a couple of teeth pulled, you know, and it makes me mad when I see these illegal immigrants coming and they get everything, free medical care, free dental, free housing, free everything. You know, I paid into the system my whole life. I'm a veteran, you know, and I can't catch a break, it seems like. You know, it's not a fair deal.
No, it isn't. And thank you for your service. And I sincerely hope that just being here on the show and talking about this, maybe something good can come of this for the situation that you're in. It's especially frustrating when you think about the time that you spent on active duty and that the rules that you're living under are not being followed by other people. Like other people are here in the country illegally and they're not following the same rules as you. Some of them are even serving in the military as illegals, which I still can't figure out how you get into the military if you're here illegally. And then after that, they get military benefits, which you and I have as citizens. We served, but it's totally different if you're in the country illegally. So my heart goes out to you. Definitely, I hope someone out there who's call in. If you're a dentist, what state are you in, Dave?
I'm in northern Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay. So if you listen to the show and you're a dentist and you do any of the kind of pro bono dentistry type stuff and you're in Wisconsin, reach out to AFR, call in, and give the information to the producer and connect you up to Dave. And Dave, can you give something to Devin or our call screener so anything, email or something, so maybe something good can come out of this. I feel terrible that you're going through that and you have kind of like, you're in two worlds. You have the Medicaid and you have the military benefit, and neither of them can help you. I mean, like you said, it's a couple of teeth getting pulled. It seems like something that could happen. And I just want to encourage people to take it in the spirit of what's being shared. Dave doesn't hate people from Mexico. He doesn't hate anybody. He's talking about the unfairness of having spent his life in service to this country and then now, as a retiree, not having the ability to get something simple done, which, you know, a lot of us, if you have dental coverage, you think to yourself, oh, just get a couple of teeth pulled. But when you have dental coverage, when you get that statement, I know you've done it too. I've been shocked. I'll have, you know, last time I had a cavity and I got the cavity filled and I got the bill. It's actually explanation of benefits. And I was taking a look at it and thinking, wow, so this is what they charge people who don't have insurance, and this is what they charge me. And then my insurance covers a little chunk, and then I'm responsible for the rest. And so, you know, you shoot off your payment or pay online or whatever, and you don't think about it again. And it's different if you don't have insurance. And I know a lot of people in the audience that, like, they don't put it together. Have you noticed that? Your health insurance doesn't cover your teeth. So you have to have dental coverage. Well, dental coverage is an additional cost each month. And as you heard, Dave is on a fixed income. So let's put the call out there. If you have some connections in that area and you're in Wisconsin, please call into the show and leave your information with one of the team here, 866-963-2037. And I don't normally do that, but I just felt like maybe something can happen. I pray that it can. So we're going over that, and I wanted to talk about this story about this Egyptian man, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, and y'all, what kind kind of a demonic, jacked up individual do you have to be to try to snatch a 5-year-old girl away from her own mom? So here's a story. It's in Barbersville, West Virginia. You've got this Egyptian man who was arrested and charged with attempted abduction after a mom said he tried to grab her 5-year-old daughter. She's with her 5-year-old daughter at the Huntington Mall. His name's Mohammed Fathi Hussein Zion. He's 54 years old, and he comes from Alexandria, Egypt. He was booked at 12:55 a.m. on Tuesday, April 2nd of 2019. And the mayor of Barbersville, Chris Tatum, says the incident happened at the mall between 6 and 7 p.m. on Monday, April 1st. So officers with the police department said the woman called 911 and she told the dispatchers that she and her 5-year-old daughter were in a department store shopping and a man tried to grab the child. She pulled her gun out and scared the nasty old man off. And then she told mall security about the incident. So mall security took off on the hunt for the guy and found him in the food court. So he tried to snatch this child up, and when he couldn't get her, instead of leaving the mall and running away, I guess he was like, I'm hungry. I'm going to go ahead and eat. Couldn't get my abduction on today, but maybe another day. So when they approached him and talked to him, dude doesn't speak any English. So how he's here in America, I have no idea. What is he doing here? He doesn't speak any English. He only speaks Arabic. So they brought in a translator by phone during the arraignment to make sure he understood what was happening to him. He was forced to surrender his passport. He's not allowed to leave the state of West Virginia, and is being held at Western Regional Jail on a $200,000 cash bond. What's the moral of this story? Well, first of all, I don't know what this Arab-speaking man is doing here in America, just hanging out at the mall trying to pick up, and literally pick up other people's kids. But that mom, she was on point with that gun, because otherwise she would have had to have basically fight this guy off herself, and he could have injured her daughter or her. And so that's a really, what an amazing story of her. She's a hero mom. She saved her daughter, and they were able to apprehend him. Praise God. You know, sorry, but I'm just glad that he's sorry, not sorry. I'm glad he's been apprehended. So I want to give you guys a little, it's so exciting. We are actually going to be chatting with Walker Wildman. He's going to be on the show talking with us about something super cool. It's called Patriot Academy. And Walker Wildman is the Vice President of Operations for American Family Association. So he'll be joining us later on in the week. We're going to have him on to talk about Patriot Academy. And so I look forward to, I'll give you more details about that as that comes up. But suffice it to say, that's going to be really exciting. So I want to let you know, if you watch the show on, and we have talked about this a little bit, and I have not yet completed all the website stuff. We're still working on that. But the good news is, like I said earlier in the first hour, I figured out how to embed the video on here. So we can definitely, you can go over there, you can make a comment. We have a Facebook plugin. And so you can comment on the live stream over there. And we're thinking of how we're going to make this a more streamlined operation, make it better for choosing what we're going to do. So we'll see. We'll see how that all cracks up. But for now, super excited to have that going over there today. And then you can also listen to some of the 60-second spots that we do here. The Just a Minute with Stacy on the right. You can check those out. I've posted new ones up over at the Facebook page. And you can find interviews that we've done, like with Chairwoman Rona McDaniel, Counterculture Mom Tina Griffin, and others. So that's really exciting too. And I also want to just mention to you that Share-a-thon's coming up. We're in the month of April. Share-a-thon happens at the end of the month. And I'm going to be broadcasting from Tupelo. Yeah. And I'm bringing a kid, just like I did to Anaheim. A different kid. So that'll be happening too. All right. Enjoy your evening tonight. God bless you from the heartland. There's a war on for our kids and for our culture. And the ones who want it the most are the ones who are going to win. We have to be the ones who want it the most, Christians. It has to be us. All right. Until tomorrow.